Good evening. I would very much like to welcome Mr. Anthony Aberford or AJ Aberford or Anthony Garfield or Tony, as I know him. So,
Yeah,
would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I will do. As Donna said, I'm a man of many faces. I sort of originally wrote the Detective George Zabit series, six crime adventure books set in Malta under the name A.J. Aberford. Those of you who know Malta will know it's got a bit of a grisly past, and there's a famous murder of a journalist in there. So when I started writing books, which probably weren't as kind to the government as they should have been, and dealt with police corruption and things like that, I decided to use the name A.J. Aberford. Aberford being a village in North Yorkshire, and AJ just being a friend of mine from school. It seemed to trip off the tongue nicely. Um, but the latest book is totally different. It's a cozy mystery, and I didn't really want the readers of the Maltese crime and adventure stories to be misled, thinking they're getting another crime and adventure story. So I thought it best to change the name. So uh, the basically the books are marketed and sold primarily on social media. So I've built up quite a following on social media. I don't want to lose that and then pick up another name which is totally unrelated. So I'm now writing under the name of Anthony Aberford. But I'll be sharing the same social media platforms so I don't lose all the followers and likes and all the rest of it. So that's basically me. I live most of the year in Malta, but come back about 3 months of the year to the UK to see family and friends, grandchildren, things like that. And we are based in Yorkshire. So the latest book, which Donna and I are going to talk about, I hope, is set in Ilkley, which is in Yorkshire and is the gateway to the Yorkshire Dales.
Brilliant. That was very concise, but also very informative. And I'm so glad you didn't go too far out. But the authors and their pen names is so confusing. We're very confused as readers, you know. Do you know how much stuff we have to remember for you lot?
Well, I know, and I try to make life as easy as possible, but sometimes you just got to stretch it a little bit. So, but I'll do my best to bear the reader in mind at all times.
I don't care. I just want my name because I want everyone to know that I wrote it, and I don't care what they think. Tough. It's got my name on, and that's
Well,
it.
yeah. If you're in Malta, you got a chance to throw you under the bus. But anyway,
I won't
but the
come to
book.
Malta then. That's fine. Noted.
Well, actually, I mean, it was all going swimmingly with the A.J. Aberford on the crime stories until my publisher put my picture on the back of the book. That rather gave the game away. So,
Yeah.
I'm, I'm pleased to report after about 5 years of that book being in circulation, I've had no threats or visitors from mysterious men in the night.
Phew. Yeah, I mean, you're here talking to me, so you know it must be fine.
Yeah, I'm alive and I'm well.
Yeah. Whew. Well, you're definitely not at risk of that with the conservatory. You're definitely not at risk of well, unless Aunt Lily decides to come and visit. So before we start, which I know Wolfers hate, but do you want to tell us a little bit about the conservatory?
I will. No, I'd be delighted to. It is a cozy mystery. It's set in Yorkshire. And I wanted to sort of do several things. One is to sort of keep within the basic parameters of a cozy, which I think would be that it's got to have a sort of a local feel to it. There's got to be some amateur sleuths. There's got to be no bad language, no gory murders or nasty crime scenes. Um, so that was the basic sort of box that I sort of started with. But that would soon bore me if I was writing like that. So I thought it's best to add in some hints of a supernatural, maybe some things, sort of try and sharpen the mystery to give the whole process a bit more of a bite. So we have a killer conservatory, and then basically the book opens with the death of a homeopathist in the conservatory, and her friends become involved in trying to find out more about this mysterious death, which seems to occur at the hands of the plants. So we have sentient murderous plants, a dead body, a conservatory, and a bunch of ladies who all work in the wellness clinic in the centre of Ilkley. The story develops that in the conservatory was found a mysterious book going back to the 16th century, and that was written basically with remedies and all sort of things that were used by the healers and the midwives and of the time. And we're talking about the time of the sort of the Pendle Witch trials, where female sort of healers and midwives, etc., were much suspected. And the history sort of starts there and moves on. And this book contains not just remedies and potions, but it contains some dark, mysterious secrets, and it's been searched for across the centuries. So the mystery is, who killed the lady in the conservatory? How did that happen? What is in the book? Who's got the book? And what happens when they find the book and discover its secret? And that's, I think, just about as concise as I can be without giving away any spoilers.
Yes, I think that pretty much nailed it.
And the other thing to think, Donna, is this is the first of three, so it's a trilogy. Um, the which I'm going to be doubly careful with because I know how it ends. So the second book is written. It's sort of just getting proofed at the moment. I've yet to submit it to Hobby to get their feedback, but it's nearly good to go. And the third one, the first draft has been done. So this is so it's yeah, it's been a year's work basically. I didn't publish anything last year, but I did a lot of writing. So this year, it'll be bang, 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 and the books will come out. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to delivering a sort of a trilogy.
Well, having read the first one, that is very exciting news. And having watched your live with UK Crime Book Club the other day, I imagine that's very exciting news for everyone that's read it because we have all fallen in love with Aunt Lily. So yes, that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, I mean, Aunt Lily is a eccentric, sort of a tousle haired, sort of elderly lady, owlish glasses, arrives on a tricycle. She dresses exclusively in woolens from the charity shops. She has long skirts with the signs of the zodiac on, men's walking boots, and she rides a tricycle. So, who could not love Aunt Lily? And she survives totally on a diet of cake. And everywhere she goes, that's what she wants to eat. And across the series, she goes to many different locations, and she's always in pursuit of cake. So, so yeah, she's a bit of a bonkers grandma with superpowers. I think is probably the best way of looking at it. And when I visualize her, I sort of see Miriam Margolis. Um,
Oh, yeah, that's a good shout.
yeah, that came to me still quite recently, but I thought, yeah, that's her. She's if you want to cast her, that's who you'd want in the role.
Yeah, oh, that'd be epic. So what came first with this story? I mean, I guess the location was kind of a given. So was it the story? Was it Aunt Lily? Was it the mysticism? What developed in what order?
Hard to say. I mean, I think the starting point was that the realization I'd probably taken the Detective Zammit books as far as I could. I think it was a natural sort of arc. When I finished book six, I'd sort of explored a lot of the themes that I wanted to sort of explore. And then I thought, well, okay, I've got a strong readership in Malta, good readership in the UK, but I could do with broadening it out. And I wanted something that appealed to a wider audience fundamentally. So I saw the cozy space and thought, well, that's just enormous. You know, there must be room for somebody in there. So that was the starting point. But I think the main thing was a friend of mine is a homeopath in Ilkley, and she sort of was telling me about her business and how she bought the business from a guy who had died, and she bought it from the widow. Um, and she went round to sign the papers on their kitchen, and the solicitor was there, and so on. And they sat there, and she refused to sign the papers until there was a sign, because Arthur, the dead husband, had to give a sign to her that it was all right to sign this business over. And this woman, I believe her totally. She's an ex-tax accountant, so they don't come any more straight than that. She said, no word of a lie. A poinsettia was on the kitchen table and it just opened. And the flower opened and the deal was signed.
Wow.
So that was, I thought, this sounds like a great group. And there's four of them in the group who started the business. So Ilkley, four ladies, a kind of a homeopathic wellness practice. And once I got that idea, that was the start of it. And then I think I don't know where Aunt Lily came from. That was from the back of my mind somewhere. Um, and she was the sort of the intervention, the sleuth who gathered them all around. But a lot of the story is about the four women, about how the four women develop across the arc of the story. Um, and I think there's a Morgana who picks up some powers along the way and grows in confidence and sort of develops like that. There's Christina, who's a spiritualist, and she's a goth and obsessed with the death of the parents when she was a child and always trying to get in touch with them, etc. And she sort of gets redemption during the story. Marjorie got an alcoholic husband, and they managed to sort. Anyway, I can't. I'm giving you all the spoilers now, but the friendship between the women is the important thing. And during it, they are each one of them is individually tested, and how they respond to that, and whether the bonds of friendship are bigger than the temptations are put in front of them, is the sort of the Faustian conundrum. So there's a lot going on. All that kind of came with time. I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but I'm definitely a pantser. So as the story started to develop, I got more confidence in using the medium of tarot cards and tarot readings, which the women do. One of the women does tarot readings, and again, it's a good device to actually move the plot on, to bring subject matters, and for the women to actually discuss. Um, yeah, and that seemed to flow through the book. But no, definitely the starting point to answer the question was my four friends and my friend in particular buying into this sort of wellness centre in Ilkley. So if she's listening, and I think she has the book today, it arrived today, and she's reading it. So who knows? We'll see what she thinks of it.
Yeah, I want to ask about the tarot, but before I do, what really struck me with the four women was you sort of really write about the things that women go through and sort of beating it and like really strong women, which was really nice to read actually. So I wondered, is that something, the women in your life sort of inspired the strengths that they all seem to have, after the experiences that they go through.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of been surrounded by strong women. They always seem to pick on me for some reason, but no, it's not. That's not true. But yeah, that
I'm sure
happens.
it is.
I mean, Jana, my wife, and we've been married for 34 years. She's an incredibly strong person. I was in business with just two of us for about 20 years, myself and a sort of a 4'6" American brain box of a woman. But yeah, when you were with someone for that long, it was she was sort of like, oh, I'd say a second wife. That's crazy, but we fought and we argued, and but we survived for 20 years, and she probably still remains my best friend. Even though we ceased to work together, we retired at 65 and went our separate ways. But yeah, I've been surrounded by strong women, and a lot of my friends are like that. So yeah, it doesn't come as sort of it wasn't difficult for me to do that. And I did deliberately want to try and you know use get the female voice going. Having certainly done the action and the thrillers and men with machine guns and charging around deserts and things like that. I thought I'd much rather sort of try my hand and see if I can actually make that work. So I'm pleased to hear that you think it has been a sort of a success in that sense, because that's good. Yeah,
I think
it's a good.
even actually as well, was the teenagers. Usually teenagers are written off But you've got the Oxbridge, can't think of all the words. The young lady that's going to take the
Anything.
Oxbridge exams and stuff. They're not stupid kids, which is a real nice change. They're
Yeah.
not dismissed and stuff as well. So yeah, that was really nice.
And the other thing that really interested me, I mean, sort of talking about the kind of, the sort of the feminine role in the book, both in terms of the the healing and the role in sort of the medical and therapeutic sort of side of things, going back from the 15th century, was the whole concept of where of the brigandage in this sort of closed community in Belgium and the Netherlands, which were almost like monasteries, but they were lay. You didn't you weren't. It wasn't a nunnery as such, but people lived. At, groups of women got together to protect themselves, basically, and after the wars, there tended to be an absence of men. There was an imbalance. There was always in the Middle Ages and moving on. There was more women than there were men. So no, they couldn't get married, and if you didn't get married, then you didn't have a protector, and your life was quite precarious. So these things formed up communities. That was interesting to read about because I had no idea, never even heard of them. But no, it's lots of lots of interesting things came out of the research. For that.
Yeah, I bet it must have been absolutely fascinating. And you touched on the tarot and the way that you wrote it was like you're teaching us as the reader as well as teaching, the group as they done the reading, which I loved because I learned a lot as well. But yeah, that must have been really interesting to research.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think researching is probably one of the best parts of writing. Actually, that's the thing that I enjoy the most. Pulling out sort of page after page of notes and uh, but the big conundrum, and you probably know yourself, is not to be I'm going to say a smart ass, but I mean not to be clever clogs, and just put stuff in to show that you know it. And that's why my wife's very good, and she has a red pen, and she says, you're showing off what you know. Take it out, just take that out. So I can usually start with about 120,000 words after the red pen's been through it. I'm down to 105.
How do you research? Because you said you're a pantser, and I'm a pantser as well, and I tend to research after I write it first, and then I think I don't know enough about that, or I'll do it during writing because I'm thinking I need to write this, but I don't actually know anything, so I'm gonna need to go look it
Yeah,
up.
no, true, true. I mean, while I'm writing, and I find you can when you're doing conversation and dialogue, you can move really quickly. The words come out, and I can sort of track dialogue in my mind quite fast. Uh, and then sometimes when you get to some of the narrative parts, and it can take all day to write, 5 paragraphs. Where if you go into research it, but I like to know sort of physically where things are. So I'm always, sort of Google Earth, ordnance and survey maps. Um, it's important to me to know, where someone's east and where's west, and how if someone's going to travel somewhere, how would they do it? How far is it? How long is it going to take? So those are the sort of details which are good, and also about what the topography is. What's the if we're talking about September in Ilkley, what's Ilkley more going to look like? Is it going to be sort of straw and pale as it is in the summer, or is the gorse going to come out? When does the gorse come out? And what colour is the gorse? Uh, so things like that are important. And then, little bits of wildlife. What are the birds there? What's nesting, what isn't nesting. So all that stuff I dig into quite deeply. And when, of course, you go to alien sort of territory, with the sort of be at the deserts of Libya and like what's the rock formations, what's the geology, what is it sand or is it gravel or is it scrub? Because people, somebody really who knows these areas and no, and I find that creates a mental picture. And once you've got the mental picture, then you can start to explain it and put the characters into the background, or the foreground. But unless I've got a mental picture, it's to me it doesn't work. It's so yeah. So I do as I go along, and then place the characters appropriately, and then let dialogue happen, and take it from there.
Yeah, because the house must have been quite important, and that's something that sort of traveled from the 16th century to modern times. So that must have been quite important to get right as well.
Well, the house, I mean, obviously you draw on your own experience, and there's Bowes Museum, which is up at Barnard Castle, which was sort of a mental image I had. Um, and the exterior was a bit like Broughton Hall, which is outside of Skipton. And this idea of the parkland, with the deers running around and sort of those metal railings that surround the big stately homes, and in Yorkshire, obviously, dry stone walls, high dry stone walls. But certainly, as you walk into the Bowes Museum, it's a great collection, and that was another thing. That how did these people get this stuff? And that the house obviously was, and the story is burnt down, but in its place there was a brick one built, a stone one built, and later, and subsequent generations did their European tours, and they went around Europe, buying up kind of console tables and works of art and lamps, and that was part of the thing, and shipping it back, into Hull or Goole, probably up the estuary from the Low Countries. And that's what happens in this story. There's a generation that actually go away and do that, and go on one of the relatives goes on the grand tour and makes the house what it is, and that's really, it's at Bowes Museum. That was my mental image of it, and a bit of research online as to what's in the museum, and you get your timeline right as well. If it was in the late 1700s, early 1800s, what sort of stuff would they be getting? What was around? So yeah, more research.
Oh, it sounds so awesome. I mean, I love a book that I learn something from when I read, which is definitely the case. So, and even the plants, that was
Yeah.
really interesting. I mean, I know there's that place, is it Northumberland or something, that I want to go to, that has loads of dangerous plants. I can't think of what it's called. But yeah,
Oh yes, 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 yes. No, I know what you're talking about. Alnwick Castle,
yeah,
and it's got, yes, it has. It's got a garden with poisonous plants in.
yeah.
But I think there's a few books now starting to get onto the toxicology of plants. I mean, Jill Johnson's written three or four, and she's got a neurodiverse detective, I think. No, she's not. She's a scientist, but she gets involved in poisonings and this sort of thing. And that's all about the toxicity of plants. And the protagonist has got a garden of toxic plants on her roof. So I mean, I read those books. That was again sort of a bit of an eye opener. So it was, yeah. But
Yeah,
Alnwick Castle's the one.
yeah, yeah, I'm dying to go there.
Yeah.
Which probably says quite a lot about me, actually, but there we are.
It's quite small, the garden. I mean, there's a maze, and there's some great waterworks. The water comes shooting down fountains and falls and stuff. That's quite dramatic. But the actual the garden of poisonous plants is quite small, and it's not that exciting. But sorry to hit the wind out of your sails, but no, it's
I don't care. I mean, I'm interested in, I've got my background in forensics, so I don't care. I'd find it
right.
interesting, even if it's small.
Right. Okay. Well,
Maybe. Well, yeah,
go
maybe
for
I'll
it.
be. I was disappointed by the pyramids in Egypt, though, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, one or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. But well, I need to tick it off my bucket list one day, maybe. Yeah, get some tips.
I mean, Northumberland's fantastic. I don't know whether you know the county, but there's all sorts of great things up there. I mean, Cragside is a wonderful place to go. Rhododendrons, when the rhododendrons are out, I'm not quite sure. And he was the guy who owned the Armstrong armament works on the Tyne and made all his money in World War One. And he built himself this fantastic sort of old house out in the middle of nowhere. So that's nearby. So that's a
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I'd have to do a tour. I do believe it's one of the counties I've never been to my shame. So yeah, I do think that it's one that I'm going to need to
You should.
sort out.
And Bamburgh Castle and the
Yeah, I know.
beaches are
Yeah,
absolutely marvellous. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. If I ever get time in my life to
Well,
visit.
you'll have to find a book festival that's nearby.
Yeah, I know, but literally, actually, yeah, or find some work near there or something, and then just
Yeah, sure.
divert off, like we have in this conversation.
We have
Yeah, completely my fault. What was I going to ask you next? Names.
names.
Because you've got, I mean, obviously, you've got some standard names and then you've got some very interesting names. So I wanted to know where and how you chose them and how you chose Aunt Lily as well, just of, quite a for quite an ordinary name for an extraordinary person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but it comes from that sort of granny thing, you know. She's sort of she's everybody's auntie, and she's everybody's sort of favourite. And it was, I mean, it requires some amount of discipline to keep it as Aunt Lily and not just drop the Aunt and have people calling her Lily. But I mean, there's Magana, and Magana's is a Yorkshire Asian name because Magana is obviously Asian heritage. Um, and there's Adeline. Adeline is a French name, and Adeline was a woman lacking in confidence, but she always saw herself as trying to be strong. So she wanted to be like Rhiannon or Madonna or, just have a single name, Adele, So she tried to call herself Adeline, and her real name was Sally Barnes. And
Some of the
she said, I thought that was just a bit sad. And Anthony says to her, yeah, poor sad Sally Barnes. You weren't sad, were you? So it's uh, but anyway, Adeline sort of grows in confidence. Actually, she's probably the one of the principal. Her and Aunt Lily are the two principal characters. Um, so Aunt Lily is obviously the more visual, the more spectacular. But I think Adeline is the one who does the tarot readings, and she is probably the driving force behind the series. To be honest.
Yeah, she probably has the biggest, I hate the word, but journey throughout the book. She has the biggest change from the beginning to the end, I think. And yeah, she's cool. And I loved her name. It was cool.
Yeah, yeah, sort of. She runs the Copper Kettle, the cafe with socially responsible values.
Yeah, which also is such a cool name for the place as well.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. That probably came. I must have found that somewhere. I can't. I just liked it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. So you said you've literally written the next two. So when you wrote the first one, did you know that it was going to be a trilogy? And did you sort of
No,
know?
no.
Okay.
I mean, it was. I think it became apparent that it's like, where is Aunt Lily from? She can never remember where she'd been, but she just knows she's somewhere that she's meant to be, and she's there. If there's a disturbance, a kind of a change in the fabric of reality or the world, then she's alerted in some way, and then she finds herself there, and she has to help sort out what this disturbance is. So it all gets a little bit complicated. And I thought the actual idea of trying to sort of do the first book as I sort of imagined it and provide a solution to these bigger questions was getting a little bit too expansive. And I thought it was best dealt with in bite-sized chunks. So if we can spread that, and I'm very interested in sort of other worlds. People who all stories, myths, and legends about people who sort of cross over from one world to the next or one realm to the next. The idea that you have certain liminal places or where the world is at its thinnest, on certain days of the year, and the spirits can move between A and B, and it's not necessarily good and evil. I didn't want to create a world where there was a mystery and I certainly didn't want to get involved in anything that looked like or felt like it was a young adult teenage portal. Didn't want to, that's not what it is. But there is a route or a path from that. This is the mystery, to somewhere else. And what is that somewhere else? And that was the sort of the key thing, and that's the question that gets explored in 2 and in 3. And where has Lee come from, and what is her role, and are there others like her? And we do know that there's others like her because we met Dr. Ormsted. So yeah, it was too much for one book. So that's where I thought, okay, I can get more mileage out of this. And also, I fell in love with Aunt Lily, and I thought, we've got a cracking character here, and there's more. We can have more fun. So, uh, and book two, I can give a bit of a tease. It starts with Adeline discovering a ley line, and or the kids, the students, discover this, which goes from York to Carlisle. And this is a new ley line. And if you actually draw a line from York to Carlisle, you cross all sorts of weird and wonderful places. And my ordnance survey map tells me that there's sort of prehistoric monuments, there's kind of abbeys, there's bridges with witches' marks on them, and there's a real spooky kind of coincidence that a lot of the stuff along this line, is which exists in real life, um, forms the background of a journey, and that journey leads to yet another mystery. So that's a tease for book two. And then book three is we find out what the ultimate challenge is and the ultimate sort of confrontation, and we understand Lily's role and what Lily's final dilemma is. So, but I can say no more than that.
So is it three books and that's it? You're not going to be tempted on going beyond?
No, no, I know. I think it's. I've done it, and I've written the end of book three, and it feels right. It's yeah. I think you can flog a dead horse. Those sort of. I have read book 15 in the series. You know, um, you can get tired, and there's other things I want to do. We talked briefly before we went live about the saga. Which is a big sort of World War II thing. I think there's a World War II book in all of us. As we know, I think everybody who writes wants to write a World War II book, um, across the piece, across the period, not sort of guns and battles and stuff, but about the home front and families enduring this and using that time as the sort of a background. That's very much what I've done the first draft for. So I'm looking forward to putting Lily to rest and starting to put my energies into that.
Yeah, actually, I was at an event on Sunday in Warrington, and apparently, the older you get, the more interest you have in World War Two, and it's not, no one's really quite sure why, but I've got an idea for a story that goes back, and I know that I'm not good enough writer yet to do it, but I also have a story that I'd like to set some in World War Two and then some later on. So yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's also. I mean, it continues the theme because World War Two, particularly, I'm from the northeast, from Sunderland, and the story is based around the shipyards on the river and the sort of the mines and the new Attlee government coming in, the changing role of women, and it's all about a lot of it sort of deals with. There's a theme about the political change of the moment, um, and 30% of the labour force of the shipyard was women during the war. And when the war finished, the men came back and all the women got kicked out. And the unions did it. The unions sort of made way for the men returning, and a lot of the women were quite sort of some of them were obviously wanted to stay. Some of the widows, this was their livelihood, and they weren't just working in the canteen. They were riveters, platers, blacksmiths. Doing real heavy manual work outside in all weathers. Hard ladies, but a huge sort of change in the societal balance of power, if you like, which was then, of course, brutally repressed by the patriarchy on their return.
Yes,
So
and we've been peed off about it ever since.
so you should be, so you should be. But no, it's interesting stuff, and I think the Second World War was such a time of radical change. It's socially, I think that's and politically with what followed. It was very much the end of the sort of the kind of the problems of the recession and that time, and the new type of politics, the new type of thinking came in the 50s, and it was such a fundamental thing. But and gave rise to the rise of oil as well. That's when the coal fields started to change, and yeah, the modern times began then. That's I think why it's of such interest.
Yeah, and there's still so much that you can say, I think, isn't there? So, even though loads of books have been
Yeah.
written, there's still another angle that you can sort of explore.
And it was a time of turmoil, and times of turmoil make the good stories.
I'm not sure about now, though. Can you imagine what sort of books will be written about this time?
I think some very interesting books will be written about this time. I mean, I really do. I mean, I think if you look at the age that we have lived through. When I was at university, I used to stand in a line and with a 10 pence in a call box. And if I wanted to ring my girlfriend, that was it. I waited on a Sunday night, I put 10 pence in. And the technological communication changes that we have now, and the fact that we're sitting here doing this, you know, in my lifetime is amazing. And I think all that is so much more impressive than going to the moon. That leaves me a little bit cold. But I do think the speed of life and the fact we've been talking about how we research, all this information at our fingertips, the scale of the life, and the riches that we have, our ability to travel and get new experiences, all in one lifetime. I don't think we actually sort of appreciate fully yet, how fundamental it is. And of course, now with AI and quantum sort of computing just around the corner, the next leap is there. You can see it. So
Yeah. I watched a program recently about China and the steps that they've made already is incredible. We're way behind, but the robots and things they have and the way that they use AI was unbelievable.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
I was watching a robot beat the Chinese national table tennis champion the other day. And that was that was frightening. Of course, what it needs is a good war, and it's amazing the man's ingenuity, to create machines that create such havoc. It's like the drones coming out of the Ukraine-Russian war. I'm sure will have a huge commercial impact in the next 5 to 10 years. But yeah, so I think there's always stories where there's change.
Yeah, just hopefully the humans still get to write them. That's the only worry, isn't it?
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, my son works in film, and he sort of he has this thing that AI may be able to produce a visual image or a moving visual image of anything that you want, but the actual ability to create a story is something which is intrinsically human, and to have that kind of the original thought. Um, is something that's going to be unique, I think, and I think in the arts, but particularly, I think it'll AI won't be able to do that. I mean, I just don't think so.
No, I agree. Although, again, going off topic, but I saw on TikTok because I am obsessed. Even though I'm a millennial, it's got me. There was a video of someone that asked Claude what it thought of being used to decide targets for bombing. And, Claude isn't supposed to think because Claude is AI. Claude is
Mm.
not a person. It should not have thoughts. And yet the answer is very interesting, very, very interesting and quite scary. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I mean, they are sort of, and without getting into a detailed discussion about which we both know very little, but I mean, it, they are given sort of behavioural characteristics, and I think Claude, out of all of them, tends to be the most responsible, but less sycophantic. Doesn't give you necessarily the answer that you think you might want at times, but that's even just benign searches. But anyway, we've probably all got our AI stories, but
Yes, indeed. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. And, as authors, we obviously are really against it, but it does have its uses. And I have to use it for work, so I can't completely write it off because it does have its uses. So,
well, you can't. I mean, if you Google something these days, there's AI sort of generated responses in your Google search. So I mean, I kind of get a bit confused by this whole thing. AI is not being used in this book. Well, I have been using Google, therefore it has been used in this book. Unfortunately, I haven't used it to sort of sharpen my prose or, run my grammar through Grammarly, which is now AI generated as well. But guarantee you, a lot of people use Grammarly.
That's it. So yeah, where do we draw the line? And where, people have, I think there's got to be some acceptance of AI now. As long as it doesn't write the book, I think you've got to accept that at some point AI has been used in some way or other.
Yeah, and I think as people get smarter, you can, I've got friends who work in further education. They run essays through sort of AI filters, and they say just the way the language comes out shows that it's being AI generated, and people are not getting away with it as much these days. But I had a friend, a Greek friend, who sort of submitted, and he's doing a postgrad work, and he just puts his essay down there in sort of pidgin English. He speaks Greek, and it's in pidgin English, and he just says improve, and bang, out comes this sort of essay. It's not really how it should be done.
No.
So, uh,
I mean, because I work in recruitment and we have AI generated CVs. So that's something that we have to fight as
yeah,
well,
yeah.
but
Do
yeah.
you
So
use
yeah.
AI bots to assess them at incoming, or
I mean, luckily I don't really have to, my job doesn't really look at them. So far it hasn't really affected me, I must admit. But some of my colleagues maybe that actually need to look at CVs, they must have something. Yeah, I'm gonna have to find it out actually. I don't know.
yeah?
Yeah, I just take numbers. I don't care about what they've done.
We
Which
were
is
going to
good.
talk about tarot cards as well, weren't we?
We were, yeah. I mean, is that something you're interested in? And homeopathy as well, actually. Is that something that you believe in? I mean, I must admit, I'm not really a big
No,
believer in that
I,
stuff.
I don't believe in it at all. I mean, I think, you
Mm.
know, if you look at how it works, I think there's a placebo effect. And again, I go back to my sort of friend, the tax accountant, who was the homeopath, who fundamentally said that it was more of a kind of a quasi counselling sort of occupation. That you have a conversation with people about what's worrying them and about whether anxiety or whatever the case may be. And although she's by no means a therapist or would hold herself out as being a therapist, sometimes the fact you just have someone to talk to about it is beneficial. And then at the end of the day, you prescribe somebody a kind of a highly diluted piece of material, which is being diluted by 10, by 10, by, power of 10, power of 10, power of 10, 3 or 5 dilutions. I mean, there's nothing in it. And people buy it and they rub it on the dog's noses and behind their cat's ears and this sort of thing. So no, I'm not a believer of that. And the tarot thing was different. The tarot thing I thought was, I would never sort of support it as kind of been used for divination, for telling the future. I'm not quite sure how you can tell the future, though. There seem to be people who can have a pretty good stab at it. But I think as a sort of a means of exploration on certain subjects, it sort of provides you with a series of prompts and a series of kind of sort of introductions to the conversation. And I think a skilled reader, and I've never been to a tarot reading with a skill, I've just looked at them online and sort of read about them. But I think a skilled reader will see who's sitting in front of them or who's in the group and can read the dynamic in the way that a skilled sort of fortune teller can. Uh, my mother, God bless her, was always highly in demand by the Rotary Club at their annual summer fair because she was a great sort of fortune teller. She was a nurse, a midwife, sort of worked in the community. She knew people, and she could read people really really well. But people came out and they were just aghast. How did you know that? You know, and she said, "Well, of course I knew him. I knew her uncle so and so, and I knew he went to Australia." And it was all a bit of a con. But I think certain people do have that knack of being able to sort of get under people's skin a bit and just read them. And I think the tarot is a bit like that. I love the art of the tarot pack. And the different sort of packs and their styles and um, yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I couldn't sit down and do a reading. I mean, I'm a million miles away from that, but just to pull the cards out and work through them and try then factor them into the story. Like what are we discussing today? What's on our the friends' minds, and at points of kind of change in the story, points of stress. They say, let's get the cards out and see what the cards tell us. And it's a good tool. It's a sort of a writer. It was quite a nice tool.
Yeah, it was, I mean, and also like looking, I've always known tarot cards and the picture, but actually the way that you wrote it, you looked more into the picture, which was so interesting and so clever. That was really and a really cool way again of moving the story and stuff, and it's not something I'd ever thought of. But of course, there's more to them. There's more than the base image. There's stuff in the
Yeah,
background and that, and I've never really thought about that before. So that was really cool.
yeah. It goes back, sort of nine signs of a zodiac, and it feeds into all kinds of mysticism and a language which is sort of arcane. Yeah, it was a good piece of research to do. So I shall miss my evenings with the tarot cards. I mean, I think my wife was getting a bit concerned.
And something I have to ask you actually is the bits of the book that goes back to the 1600s that were in another language that I just skipped past. Is that nonsense or is that actually?
But no, that's actually the real thing. I mean, that is the real thing. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can. It's like the songs in Lord of the Rings. I mean, I never bothered reading the songs of Lord of the Rings. I had no interest in them at all, so I don't blame people skipping them. But they were basically translated later on, and they were clues, and they were sort of, they did have some meaning, and they were actually written in. You had the bits from the diary were written in sort of early English, which is Shakespearean English, and I did that, and I sort of tried to get not put in too many forsooths and verily and all this sort of thing, but try to give it a flavour of the early sort of 1600s. When you go back to sort of Old English is basically Norse, and Germanic, um, and there's dictionaries online where you can actually pull the words out, but actually getting the accents right and finding some of the letters was a bit tricky at times. But
Yeah.
no, it's true. But then there was some old Spanish, and my wife speaks Spanish, and she has a Spanish teacher, and the Spanish teacher did the old Spanish, and no, it's more or less it should work. Um,
That's good to know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just say, oh.
No, no, no. I would be with you. I'd do the same thing.
How did Hobeck react when you said that you were writing a cozy crime and what it was about?
Well, they sort of. I mean, they were very good actually. I mean, they sort of just sent it back to me, but no. I mean, I think they were a bit nonplussed at first, and I probably gave it to them too early, and they sort of said it wasn't ready, and they were right. There was it probably took me longer to write than any other book. This one, and I had different things happen at different times. And I deliberately sort of mixed up the time frames, and that didn't work. Aunt Lily appeared sort of later than she did in this one, and um, anyway, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But I'd messed about with it, and it didn't read. It was confusing. Um, they liked Aunt Lily, and they thought it was probably just about on the margins of what their imprint would do. I was arguing it was suspense and mystery. They were arguing it was cozy and nothing to do with them. But we had a discussion about it, and then gradually, I worked the book into a more coherent format. It's now more linear, and it works better that way. Um, but no, it's been I've rewritten it. I think probably two or three times now. So it wasn't an easy write, and they challenge quite hard. So yeah, fine. That's what they're there for. They
Yeah,
put their name to it and put their money to it. So they're quite entitled to do so, and the book is better for it. So I thank them. I hope they take two and three.
I'm sure they will. I could imagine Rebecca completely loving Aunt Lily and not caring. You know,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Lily's a big success. Yeah.
yeah. And I've got to mention the cover. Is that another Jane map cover?
It is a Jane map cover. I mean, we got quite involved in the cover, and again, I tried to, yeah. I mean, I sort of did a proper cover brief, and this was what I had in mind. I wanted the sort of, the dark background, and I thought that sort of forest green look, if people haven't seen it, that's the forest green with the sort of the red petals, which kind of symbolizes the poison and the sort of the peril and the risk and blood, and obviously the conservatory there, and the creepers and the vines, sort of seemed to go very well. But yeah, I mean, we were a bit of a nuisance really about that because we went backwards and forwards quite a few times. But I mean, I think everyone is really pleased with it, so it was worth it.
Yeah, it's a great cover. I love it, and it's very impactful. It would definitely catch my eye if I saw it.
Yeah,
It's.
yeah.
Well, I can't think of any more questions for you unless you think there's anything really obvious that I've not asked you or something that you want to
Well,
talk about that I...
I'm old. I've got plenty. I've said probably far too much, giving you lots of spoilers and well,
I mean,
proprietary
not
information.
for me because I've read it, so
Well, no, yeah, yeah, one of the other two books. But
yeah, no,
no, it's been great, Donna. I've enjoyed talking to you as always,
likewise.
and hope it's a hit with the other viewers. What do you call them? What do you call
Viewers,
your
yeah,
audience?
readers, viewers, yeah.
Viewers, readers? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so thank you so much for having me on.
Just remind everyone as well where they can get it.
It is available either directly from Holbeck.net, and they do it, and I think they don't charge for the postage and packaging, or it's available on Amazon in Kindle and in the paperback.
And if anyone wanted a signed copy,
I live in Malta. Might be tricky, but we
sign
might
some before you leave. Just ask him for,
ask him for a friend.
Mm,
Okay, well we'll probably do that then. I'll have
okay,
a chat. We'll have a chat with you, and maybe we'll do a giveaway.
awesome. Yep, that sounds good.
All right. So we'll probably do a question, and then we'll see who wins it. And I'll leave 2 copies signed.
Fab. Good.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you, Donna. Cheers.